Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us at today's Lunch and Learn. A few housekeeping tips. This will be recorded, so if you need to leave the meeting early or if you'd like to watch it afterwards, it'll be available online. Also, please make sure that you mute your microphones. And if you have any questions, we do have someone monitoring the text box, so you can ask questions at the end or type them out. Today, we will be welcoming Scott Goff. He will be presenting on winter fire safety. He's the Division Chief Fire Marshal from Umatilla County Fire District 1. Thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you for having me here today. So, again, we're going to be talking about winter fire safety today. This tends to be the time of the year that we see an uptick in the number of fires that we respond to. So we're going to go through and see if we can figure out some things to do around the house to try to prevent us from visiting you during the holiday season. So in Oregon, some of our leading fire causes for residential structure fires are cooking, heating, intentionally set fires, electrical fires, and smoking. And so we'll go through today and kind of talk a little bit about some of these different fires, how we tend to see them start, and things that we can do to try to keep a fire from starting. And the picture in this slide is actually of a house fire that we responded to last year. And this was a cooking fire. It was somebody about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning that decided they wanted to cook some food, started the process, and then actually fell asleep. And this was the result of that unattended cooking. So cooking fires are a big part of the residential fires that we respond to, especially unattended cooking. So some things to keep in mind while you're cooking is turn the stove off if you're going to leave the room. Don't cook your foods on the high temperature setting. I've been around a lot of people, and that's what they do. They need to cook something, put the burner on high. Let's cook it. Everybody wants everything right now, and that creates problems for us when you're cooking on high, especially when you're cooking greasy or oily type foods or using those kinds of things as a cooking medium. Also, be aware of other distractions. We see a lot of distractions from phone calls, other electronic devices, kids, anything like that that could distract our attention away from these heating appliances. Don't cook if you're sleepy or impaired. Okay, as I showed in the first picture, that was somebody that was tired, that started the cooking process and then fell asleep and woke up to their kitchen on fire. Some other things to keep in mind: keeping any combustible materials away from the stove top. Okay, so things like curtains, pot holders, other cooking appliances. This picture is actually of another kitchen fire that we responded to last year. And what you see on that stove top there is an air fryer. And just 2 weeks before this fire happened, I was reading about stovetop fires and these air fryers in one of our national trade magazines. And 2 weeks later, what am I looking at? I'm looking at a portable kitchen appliance that was left on a stovetop. And if you look at the control knobs down on the front of that stove, you'll see that second knob over from the left is in the on position. And if you look a little bit closer, you can see that the burner indicator for that knob is showing the left rear burner. And so the air fryer here has been moved around a little bit because when our crews went in to put the fire out, when they sprayed water in that area, it kind of moved stuff around a little bit on the stovetop. But again, Burner left on, small appliance, or potentially other combustible materials left on the stovetop can create problems for us. Keep your stovetops and your burners clean. Any frying or anything that you do, try to clean that grease up. Don't allow that stuff to build up on your stovetops. And as I was putting this together, the Oregon State Fire Marshal's Office put out some information on a review of the last 5 years worth of data. So from 2015 to 2019, that 5-year span, there was a little over 3,000 residential structure fires. And during the months of November and December, cooking fires accounted for about 20% of those residential structure fires. I looked at our data a couple of years ago, and one of the concerning things that I found was that a lot of our cooking fires or unattended cooking fires, over half of those were in multifamily dwellings. They were in apartment buildings. So we're not only looking at potentially the one family that lives where the kitchen that caught fire is, but in a multifamily dwelling, we're potentially looking at putting multiple families out of their home. And during the holiday season, that's one of the more difficult things that we tend to see from time to time is people being displaced. So if you do happen to have a grease fire, first thing is don't add water to the fire. Okay, all that does when that water converts to steam, that's how you get that spattering of the grease, and so all that tends to do is spread the fire. So some things to keep in mind. First of all is your safety. So if it's safe for you to do so, one of the things you can do is try to remove the heat by turning off the burner. So you can see the kitchen stove in this photo, the control knobs are on the front. So if the control knobs were on the back panel, you can see that it's probably not going to be safe for you to remove the heat. Another thing to kind of keep in mind or pay attention to, especially when you're cooking greasy foods, is have a lid or a cookie sheet close by that you can use to cover that to basically smother and remove the oxygen from that fire. Again, you need to make the determination as to whether it's safe for you to try to do that or not. We recommend not trying to move the pan because that hot grease or whatever that's in that pan, you could spill that and it could not only spread the fire, but it could also cause some burn injuries. So another thing that we want to prevent, we don't like to see people going into the hospital for something that's preventable, especially around the holidays. If it's not safe for you to do anything, leave the house, make sure you close the doors, and call 911. Okay? And we'll talk about some other things like portable fire extinguishers a little bit later in the presentation. Another thing that we tend to see increase statewide this time of year is the use of candles. And so, of course, we recommend using the flameless candles, the little LEDs with the flickering lights and those kinds of things. They make them where they're scented and everything now, if that's what you're trying to get out of burning the candles. But if you make the decision to use the flaming candles, then there's some safety things that we want to keep in mind. And I found this candle circle of safety that kind of talks about the different things that we want to try to use to increase our safety with the use of flaming candles. Keeping things, combustible materials, at least a foot away from the candle. Making sure that you put the candle out. Keep it out of reach of children and pets, especially if you've got cats. They like to jump on top of things, whether you're there or not. And so that could be something that they accidentally knock over, because if it's out as a decoration for the holidays, it's not something that's normally there. Make sure that we've got a good solid base for the candle and never leave it unattended. So just again, re-emphasizing using that open flame, keep combustible materials away, make sure that you don't leave the candle unattended, make sure that it's in a solid location, and use flameless candles when possible. You may have seen, I think it's Dollar Tree that's doing a big recall now on some candles that they were selling earlier this year, because that candle wax tends to start burning before it's drawn up into the wick. And so there's been some fires from some of those. So again, pay attention, don't leave it unattended, put it out. So moving on to heating safety. So this is another thing that we see this time of year. We see it with heat lamps being used for animals outside. So chicken coops, dog kennels, dog houses, any of those kinds of places. And we start to see it in our homes as well. So chimney fires, again, going back to that report or that data that was just released from the State Fire Marshal's office, in that 5-year period from 2015 to 2019, chimney fires accounted for 29% of the residential structure fires during the months of November and December over that 5-year period. So some suggestions on that is make sure as we move into the fall, before we get into the heating season, having your chimney cleaned, have it inspected, because over the summer there could be things like birds or raccoons or something like that that decide to try to live in your chimney, and you don't want to find that out the first time you go to have a fire in your fireplace or your wood stove. So try to get those cleaned out prior to the heating season. Nationally, 80% of heating-related fire deaths occur because of careless use of portable space heaters. Okay, most of the time, what we find is that we've got combustible materials that are too close to that heater. Okay, the heaters, they should be listed by Underwriter Laboratories or one of the other testing labs for use, and they should be inspected before use to make sure that they're clean. The heating elements don't have a collection of dust from storage during the summer months. Make sure that the cord isn't damaged, that it hasn't been pinched or cut or anything like that that would create a weak point in that electrical cord that could be susceptible to a fire. We like to see the portable electric space heaters plug directly into an outlet, because when we start using extension cords, and I'll show you another picture here in a minute of another fire that we had here in Hermiston, a lot of times people aren't using the right type of extension cord for that space heater. It's usually too small, or it's damaged, or something else. So plug the space heaters, if you need to use them, directly into a wall outlet. Don't use extension cords or power strips. Another thing with any kind of a portable space heater, we like to see about a 3-foot clearance to combustible materials. As you can see in this picture, this space heater was a little too close to the piece of furniture. This isn't one of my photos, so I don't know any background on it. But again, it just shows the potential for what could happen when we don't provide some of that clear space. So electrical safety, this is the time of year that we start to see a lot of electrical issues. Overloading outlets is certainly one thing that we get concerned with, especially with all the Christmas lighting and other electrically powered holiday decorations that we may use. So that could lead to an overloading of an electrical circuit. We want to make sure that any cords that we're using, they don't go through somewhere where they could get damaged. Running them under a carpet in front of the door, basically that insulates that cord and doesn't allow that heating that's generated from the electrical power going through that cord. It doesn't allow that heat to dissipate off of that cord. Putting it in places where it could get pinched. So running it from an inside outlet through the door to the outside, where that opening and closing of that door is going to be constantly pinching. And anytime we put a tight bend or a pinch or anything like that to a power cord, we're creating damage. And with electrical cords, that damage turns into resistance in the electricity going through that cord, and that resistance turns to heat, and if we're not dissipating the heat off of there appropriately, that leads to a failure. So we don't want to use more than the manufacturer's recommendations for the number of light strands that we can put together. So again, pay attention to your light cords and pay attention to how many they recommend to put together as a maximum. Also, inspect your cords and make sure that there's no damage or discoloration or anything like that that could indicate that there's a problem. So the picture on the left here is actually out of one of the fire scenes that I looked at in 2018 here in Hermiston. And what you can see is the white lightweight extension cord that has a phone charger plugged into one side, has a ground elimination adapter plugged into the other side with a 3-pronged cord plugged into that. From this white extension cord back to the electrical outlet, there was actually another lightweight extension cord plugged in. So the one in the picture here is actually the second lightweight power cord. The 3-pronged plug coming out of the ground adapter actually went to a power strip, and plugged into that power strip was a portable electric space heater. And we ended up with a failure of the lightweight extension cord because there was more draw on that. It was too small for the power strip and the electric space heater. So again, we're having fires right here in our community because of some of these issues. The photo on the right is actually a power strip that was in one of the offices of one of our fire stations. It was not overloaded. It was not showing any indication of failure. And yet you can see kind of what the result was of that. So again, inspect your electrical appliances, your power strips, your extension cords, anything like that. And if there's any discoloration, any damage, recommend getting rid of it and replacing it. So Christmas trees are another thing that we tend to see this time of year. One of the concerning things to me is for this year is everybody trying to get in the holiday spirit much earlier than normal. People putting their Christmas trees up before Thanksgiving. The artificial trees aren't too bad, but There's a lot of live trees that are going into places too. So making sure that if you're using the live trees, that they're getting plenty of water. Keep the trees away from your exit routes out of your house so that you don't get cut off. Keep them away from heat sources, especially the live trees. So heat vents for your furnace, wood stove, fireplace, space heater, whatever. Keep that tree away from any of those heat sources. That's just going to make that tree, that live tree, dry out that much quicker. If you notice that the tree's dried out, and you can tell that typically by going up and grabbing the branches, and if often needles fall off in your hand, it's probably a little too dry and needs to be removed from the house before we create bigger issues for us potentially. And again, don't use the damaged cords. Is there a way we can get this video to come up?
Yes.
So we've got just a short video that we will take a look at for Christmas trees. So the tree on the left is a dry Christmas tree. The tree on the right is a live, wet Christmas tree. So you can see the difference in what the amount of heat and fire that we get off of a dry Christmas tree versus one that is maintaining some of its moisture. So again, that's why we say if the tree dries out, get it out of the house. Because it just takes a little bit. And you know, the fires and stuff that we've had in the state this year, I mean, this is some of the conditions, the dry or drought conditions that contributed to some of that on top of the weather and many other issues.
That one on the right's kind of putting itself out.
Mm-hmm. So you can tell the difference when you got high moisture content versus no moisture content.
There you go.
So, kind of starting to tie this together. First thing is, no two ways out of every room in your house. Okay? So that if you're cut off from one, you've got another way to get out. I always like talking to the little kids about this. Two ways out of your bedroom, the door and the window. And I usually ask the little kids, what's the easiest way to get in and out of your bedroom? And they focus in on the window. But knowing and understanding two ways out, practicing that, and designating a meeting place outside so that everybody knows to go there to gather. Because one of the other important pieces of information that we like to have if we're responding to a fire is, do we have people inside or not? So if everybody goes to a meeting place, we can start get an account of who's there and who's not. Hopefully everybody makes it to the meeting place and we have no issues, but that's information that we like to know either while we're responding or as we get on scene at the fire incident. So another thing is smoke alarms, having smoke alarms in your residence. Some of the recommendations, check them once a month. Change the batteries once a year. In Oregon, most of the battery-operated smoke alarms that you're going to find now have the 10-year battery in them. So they're not going to need to have the battery replaced every year, but they will give you the same type of low battery signal when they get to the end of their lifespan. National recommendations are to change your smoke alarms every 10 years because the sensors in them, they start to get dirty, start to degrade, all of those kinds of things. But if you've got hardwired or electrical smoke alarms in your house, they likely have battery backup so that in the event of a power failure, you still have that protection. And so you'll get the same low battery signal with those hardwired ones as well. And if you have a smoke alarm that's in a spot that's constantly going off, in a hallway outside of a bathroom, and somebody takes a hot shower and they open the door to the bathroom and the steam or the high moisture comes out into the hallway and sets it off, relocate it. We see a lot of times where people will either remove the battery or remove the smoke alarm and not put it up somewhere else. So if you've got a smoke alarm that's creating those nuisance alarms, relocate it so that we still have that protection. Make sure that every occupied level of our home, so if you've got a basement and a main floor and an upper floor, we want to see at least one smoke alarm on each of those levels. And then we like to see those smoke alarms also placed inside and outside of the sleeping rooms in the house. So at my house, I've got 8 smoke alarms. Okay, because we've got bedrooms located on 2 different levels in different areas. So, so again, every level, and we like to see them both inside and outside of the sleeping areas. Carbon monoxide alarms, again, making a big push for the safety. So if you've got any type of fuel burning appliance, so whether it's natural gas furnace, natural gas kitchen appliances, wood stove, anything like that that burns any type of fuel, whether it's wood, natural gas, propane, it's going to put off the carbon monoxide. And so having those carbon monoxide detectors in your home will provide you that early warning because, again, it's a colorless, odorless gas, so you're not going to know it's there. And high-level CO exposures can cause death fairly quickly, but low-level exposures over a long period of time, you can get the same type of reaction as an acute high dose in a short period of time. So, you know, if you've got the fuel burning appliances and you're getting frequent headaches or nausea, any of the flu-like symptoms, consider that carbon monoxide potentially as being a culprit of that. And again, it doesn't have to be a high-level blast over a short period of time. That can build up over a long period of time as well. And when you're installing these, again, follow the manufacturer's recommendations for installation. I've seen them that gets installed on the ceiling. I see some that get plugged into outlets close to the floor, and anywhere in between. So follow those manufacturer instructions for installing that. Another consideration is portable fire extinguishers. We have 5 different types of fires that we could encounter between ordinary combustibles, flammable liquids and gases, energized electrical, combustible metals, and kitchen cooking grease. So make sure that if you're at home, typically just an ABC dry chemical fire extinguisher is going to take care of everything that you have. Make sure that you've got the right extinguisher for the right type of fire. And make sure that you're comfortable. If you're not comfortable or you have any doubt, leave the house. call 911. Using a portable fire extinguisher, we like to use the acronym PASS. I know that's one of the required trainings for hospital staff is learning how to use fire extinguishers. So the acronym PASS stands for pull, aim, squeeze, and sweep. So we're pulling the pin out of the extinguisher, aiming that hose or nozzle at the base of the fire, squeezing the handle, and then sweeping that extinguishing powder back and forth at the base of the fire to put the fire out. So if you have a fire, leave the house, close the door. Okay, fires need oxygen to be able to burn. And if we go out the front door and leave the front door wide open, guess where that fire is probably going to be when the fire department arrives? It's going to be coming out that front door. So close the door when you leave the house. Try to limit the amount of oxygen that fire has access to. Call 911 from outside. Okay, report all the fires to the fire department, even if you think you've got it put out. Okay, we see this a lot of times on even debris piles outside, and the wind comes up the next day, and we're out there putting out a fire that's running down through the dry grass. And usually the person says, "Well, I put it out yesterday." Well, it didn't get completely extinguished because that's why we're here today. So even if you think you put it out, have the fire department respond and check it. Okay. Don't ignore your alarms. Okay. They're going off for a reason. So it could be that nuisance alarm from cooking. It could be the steam from the shower, but it also could be an actual fire incident. So don't ignore it. Go and investigate. Once you leave, stay out. Don't go back inside for pets or possessions or anything like that. And notify us if there's anybody that is unaccounted for. Okay. So at this point, I'll open it up to see if we have any questions. And hearing none, wish everybody Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. And hopefully we don't have to come see you.
Thank you for coming today.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining our Lunch and Learn. Have a happy holidays, and we will see you next week, or next month, I'm sorry.